The impossible warship, the battle had already begun. Admiral Veen stood on the bridge of his command ship, staring at the holographic display. His fleet, the proud warriors of the Zarth Empire, had surrounded Earth's last defense line. Thousands of alien warships floated in the darkness of space, their weapons aimed at the small human fleet ahead. Victory was certain. The humans had fought well, but they were outnumbered. Their technology was primitive, their ships were weak. The Zarth had conquered hundreds of worlds, and Earth would be no different. Begin the final attack. Veen commanded. The fleet responded instantly. Thousands of plasma cannons powered up, and torpedoes were armed. The human fleet, fragile and hopeless, had nowhere to run. Then something changed. A strange energy spike appeared on the scanners. It was unlike anything the Zarth had ever seen. A deep hum echoed through the command ship's walls, as if the universe itself was warning them. A ship appeared. Not just any ship, a monstrosity. It did not arrive from hyperspace. It did not warp in. It simply appeared. The Zarth fleet scanners malfunctioned. Ratings made no sense. The ship was massive, far larger than any known warship. Its shape was unnatural, its hull shifting as if it refused to obey the laws of physics. The dark metal surface reflected no light, making it almost invisible against the void. For a moment there was silence. Admiral Veen felt something strange, something he had never felt before in all his years of war. Fear. A voice broke the silence. Numb. Identified vessel detected. His tactical officer reported, "Sir, this ship shouldn't exist." Veen clenched his fists. This had to be some kind of human trick. Lock weapons on the anomaly and fire. The Zarth fleet obeyed. Thousands of plasma bolts and torpedoes streaked toward the mysterious warship. The attack should have been devastating, but the ship did not move. It did not dodge. It simply let the attacks hit, and nothing happened. The plasma bolts vanished on impact. Torpedoes exploded, but there was no damage. No shields flickered, no armor cracked. It was as if the ship was untouchable. Then the ship responded. A single beam of crimson energy fired from the unknown vessel. It did not travel like normal weapons. It bent, twisted, and moved as if it had a mind of its own. It struck a Zarth battleship. The battleship vanished. No explosion, no debris. It simply ceased to exist. The Zarth fleet fell into chaos. Impossible, one of Land's officers shouted it. It erased an entire warship. In one shot, another ship fired at the anomaly, but it was pointless. The mysterious warship began to move faster than any known vessel. It did not follow the rules of space travel. It did not accelerate or turn. It was just there, appearing and disappearing at random locations. It fired again and again and again. Each shot erased another Zarth warship. Admiral Vland's breathing became heavy. His empire had fought countless wars, but never against something like this. This was not war. This was a massacre. This can't be human technology. Whispered, no species can build something like that. His mind raced for answers. Was it a lost super weapon from an ancient civilization, a being from another dimension, or had the humans created something beyond the understanding of the universe? The impossible warship turned toward the command ship. For the first time in his life, Admiral Veen felt true terror. The phantom of war. Admiral Veen had seen war. He had conquered worlds, destroyed civilizations, and stood victorious over the ashes of fallen empires. He had never known defeat, but this was not a battle. This was annihilation. The impossible warship moved through the battlefield like a ghost. It did not fly. It shifted. One moment it was in front of a Zarth dreadnought, and in the next it was behind it. Its weapons did not fire like conventional cannons. Instead, reality itself twisted, and ships simply ceased to exist. One by one, the Zarth warships vanished. No wreckage, no escape pods, just empty space where mighty battleships had once floated. Veen gripped the control panel, his sharp claws digging into the metal. This is not possible. His officers were panicking. Warriors who had never feared death were trembling. The ship's scanners were useless, flickering with meaningless numbers and error codes. No one could explain what they were fighting. The warship had no heat signature, no electromagnetic readings, no life signs. It was like the universe itself refused to acknowledge its existence. A deep voice echoed through the command ship's bridge, but it did not come from the speakers, it came from everywhere. You should not have come here. Land froze. The voice was human, but it carried something else, something unnatural. It was layered as if more than one being was speaking at the same time, a whisper of something ancient, something far beyond the understanding of mortal minds. Open a channel to the human fleet, Veen ordered. His communications officer was pale. Sir, the humans. ARP responding. Veen turned toward the tactical display. The human ships had not fired a single shot. They had not moved, not even tried to escape. They just sat there silent, observers of the massacre, as if they knew this warship would come, as if they knew what it would do. The Zarth Empire had believed itself to be the greatest force in the galaxy. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought this would be an easy conquest. They had been wrong. A pulse of energy rippled through space. The Zarth fleet's remaining ships began losing power. Engines shut down, weapons failed, and entire battleships were left drifting. The warship was not attacking anymore. It was choosing. Veen felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him, studying him, judging him. Then the impossible warship moved again, not with thrusters, not with hyperspace. It simply blinked across the battlefield until it was right in front of the Zarth command ship. The bridge became deeply silent. No one dared breathe. The warship's hull was pure darkness, absorbing all light, as if it were a piece of the void itself. No symbols, no markings, just a presence that did not belong in this universe. A single hatch opened. A figure stepped out. Vlan's mind screamed that this was impossible. A humanoid shape standing on the hull of the ship, without a suit, without protection, floating in the vacuum of space, as if it were standing on solid ground. The figure was human, or at least it looked human, but its eyes, they burned. Not with fire, not with light, but with something far worse, something ancient. Something that did not belong in this reality. Viken had faced death many times, but this was the first time he felt like he was standing before something that could erase his very soul. The figure raised a hand, a single gesture, and every Zarf officer on the bridge felt something deep within them shift, as if something inside their body, something fundamental to their existence, was suddenly within this being's control. You were one weird, a blinding flash filled the command ship, and then darkness, the judgment of the void. Darkness. Admiral Veen did not know how long it lasted. It was not the absence of light. It was something deeper, a void that swallowed not just sight but thought. For the first time in his life, he felt small. Then the darkness cracked, sound rushed back, light returned. Veen found himself gasping for air, clutching the edges of his command chair. His crew was still there, but something was wrong. The Zaraf flagship was no longer in formation. It was alone. Every other ship in the fleet was gone, not destroyed, not damaged, gone. His second-in-command officer, Gar, was trembling. Sir, what happened? Vane's claws dug into the armrests. That was what he needed to know. His empire had sent 1,000 warships to crush humanity. Now only one remained, and before them, in the abyss of space, floated the impossible warship. No weapons fired, no demands were made. It just waited, as if daring them to run, as if waiting to see if they had learned their lesson. Vlan's mind raced. This wasn't normal warfare. This wasn't even an enemy they could fight. The Tsar Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, crushing civilizations beneath its might. But now they had encountered something they could not control, a force beyond war, beyond reason. He forced himself to stand. Open a transmission. Gur hesitated, but obeyed. Connected. Sir Veen took a deep breath and stepped forward. His holographic image appeared before the warship. He expected to see a captain and an admiral, some kind of leader. Instead, the same figure stood on the hull. No suit, no weapons, only those burning eyes. The human, or whatever it was, studied him. Then it spoke. Do you understand now? Vane's throat went dry. His warriors did not surrender. The Zarth Empire did not bow, and yet something deep inside him whispered the truth. This was not a battle they could win. His empire had looked at humanity and seen only flesh and bone, but this was something else something they were never meant to provoke. He straightened his posture. His pride fought against the words he was about to say, but his survival instinct. "One, we surrender." Silenced then for the first time, the figure smiled, not in cruelty, not in triumph, but as if it had been waiting for those words. The darkness returned. But this time it was different. It wrapped around them like a whisper, not a storm, the feeling of unseen eyes, watching them faded, and when the light returned, the impossible warship was gone. Veem stumbled forward, breathing heavily. The command deck was filled with quiet sobs, exhausted guests. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Gur broke the silence. "Yes, sir, what do we tell the Empire?" Veem looked at the empty void where the warship had once been. "That we met something we were never meant to, that we faced the judgment of the void and lived." The Empire trembles. The Zarth Empire had never known fear for thousands of years. They had crushed lesser species, expanded across the stars, and rewritten history. With the blood of the conquered, their fleets were vast, their armies were unstoppable, their rule was absolute. Until now, until one warship changed everything. Admiral Veem stood in the Grand War Council chamber, his claws gripping the cold metal railing before him. The Emperor of Zarth, the towering beast of muscle and wisdom, stared with piercing yellow eyes around them. Warlords, strategists, and high-ranking officials watched in silence. Vex-El had expected rage, humiliation, punishment. Instead, the Emperor only asked one question: "What did you see?" The room went still. Vlan's throat felt dry, but he answered, "Truth was the only option. I saw something beyond." War whispers filled the chamber. Some scoffed, others leaned closer. The Emperor remained motionless. "Explain." Vane took a breath. "We arrived with 1,000 warships. We left with one." Someone growled. A warlord slammed his fist on the table. "Yuan, the great Zarth Empire does not flee." Veem turned his gaze to him. "You think we had a choice?" His voice was sharp, unshaken. "This was not a battle. It was a judgment. Our weapons did nothing. Our tactics meant nothing. Our fleet was erased without a single shot being fired." Silence. The warlord opened his mouth, then closed it. The Emperor exhaled slowly. "And this warship, what was it?" Veem's claws tightened. "It was human." Laughter erupted. The Zarth knew humans, a weak young species. They had no grand fleets, no great armies. They should have been nothing. And yet the Emperor did not laugh. "Descried." Veem hesitated, then spoke. "It did not move like any warship. We know it did not fire weapons, yet ships vanished around it. It carried no army. Yet we felt like we were standing before something ancient, something that should not exist." He clenched his fists. "And there was a figure." The whispers stopped. "A figure," the Emperor repeated. "Yes, a human, or something that looked like one. It did not wear armor. It did not issue threats. It simply stood on the hall." Veem shuddered at the memory. "And when it looked at me, I felt like I was staring into a void that had already decided if I deserved to exist." The chamber felt colder. The Emperor's expression did not change, but Veem saw something in his eyes, a realization, a warning. Then the Emperor spoke. "War with humanity is no longer an option." A stunned silence. Then Kado's shouts of protest, outrage. Veem did not care. He had survived where others had not. He had seen what none of them could imagine. And as the Emperor raised his hand to silence the room, he understood. The Zarth had thought themselves invincible. Now they knew the truth. There was something in the galaxy they could not conquer, and it had chosen to let them live for now. Whispers in the void. The galaxy was watching when the Zarth Empire stopped its war against humanity. Every faction, every empire, every warlord wanted to know why the Zarth had never backed down from a fight. They had wiped out entire species for lesser offenses, but now, after sending 1,000 warships, they had returned with only one, and refused to speak of what happened. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the humans had developed a weapon so powerful it could erase entire fleets. Others claimed the Zarth had encountered a god in human form. A few whispered that the warship wasn't human at all, but something else wearing their face. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, one question remained: was it still out there? The Union of Galactic Scholars had never concerned itself with war. It was the keeper of knowledge, an ancient order that had seen empires rise and fall for centuries. They had catalogued every anomaly in the universe. But never had they encountered something that defied logic like this high scholar. Relic leaned forward, his eyes locked onto the Zarth battle records that had been leaked onto the black market. He played the footage again. The warship did not exist in any known human registry, no official reports, no manufacturing logs. It had no known origin, no name, and yet there it was, standing alone against a fleet of nightmares. Relic's tendrils twitched in unease. Play it again, slow it down. His assistant obeyed. The screen flickered, zooming in on the impossible figure standing on the hull of the warship, a human or something that looked like one. The figure did not move, did not react, but as the footage slowed to a crawl, Relic's breath caught in his throat for a fraction of a second, so fast it was almost unnoticeable. The figure turned and looked at the camera, as if it knew, as if it was watching them. Relic felt an unnatural chill creep through his body. He turned to his assistant, but they were already shutting down the screen. Their hands trembled. Sir, I think the assistant swallowed hard. I think we shouldn't look into this anymore. Relic had spent his life chasing the unknown. He had never feared knowledge, but now for the first time he wasn't so sure. The warship was still out there, and it was watching. Who dared to seek it? The hunt begins. The warship was a ghost. No official records, no fleet affiliation, no trace of where it came from. And yet across the galaxy the legend was growing. The Zarth Empire refused to speak of it. The Union of Galactic Scholars shut down their investigation. Every faction, every government, every warlord pretended it did not exist, but silence only made the whispers louder. And in the dark corners of the universe, some refused to let the mystery die. They wanted to find it, they wanted to own it, they wanted to control it. And one man believed he could. The hunter, Captain Drennick, sat in the cockpit of his black market cruiser, staring at the swirling vortex of hyperspace. A small data chip spun between his fingers. Coordinates, not just any coordinates, the last known location of the impossible. Warship Varric had spent his entire life chasing myths, artifacts of forgotten civilizations, ancient technology lost to time. But this was different. The warship wasn't just a relic, it was power. And power could be bought, stolen, or taken by force. His crew was restless. Skilled mercenaries, ex-military pilots, and rogue scientists, the best money could buy. But even they were uneasy. We shouldn't be doing this. His second in command, Lura, muttered. She was a hardened fighter, but now she wouldn't meet his gaze. You know what happened to the Tsar fleet? Varric smirked. Exactly. Whatever destroyed them. It wasn't just a warship. It was something more. He leaned closer. And if we find it first, we control it. Lura shook her head. And if it doesn't want to be controlled? Varric didn't answer, because deep down he already knew the truth. This wasn't a hunt, it was a test. And the warship was waiting. The trap, the coordinates, lead them to a dead system, a place forgotten by time. No planets, no moons, just a field of shattered debris, and a single unnatural silence. This is wrong, Lura whispered. Space is never this quiet. Varric ignored her scan for anomalies. The ship's sensors flickered, then something changed. The stars dimmed, not just visually. The entire ship felt colder, heavier, like they had stepped into the shadow of something immense. And then they saw it, the warship, floating in the void, waiting. No lights, no signals, no energy readings. It was as if it was watching them. Varric exhaled. We found it. Then the lights in his ship flickered, and a voice, one that did not belong to any of his crew, spoke through the cons. You were not invited. The warship speaks for the first time in his life. Captain Dren. Varric felt small. The voice over the comms wasn't a signal, it wasn't interference. It was inside his ship, inside his mind. You were not invited. Laura's hands trembled over the controls. Ver, we need to leave now. Ver couldn't move. The warship floated before them, an abyss of shifting metal, as if space itself bent around it. It had no visible weapons, no energy emissions, nothing that made sense, but he could feel it. It was alive, and it was watching. Then the ship's systems shut down. The abyss stares back. The lights in the cockpit flickered. The control panels went dark. The hum of the engines fell silent, dead. Silence, then something moved inside the warship, not physically in the space. Between thoughts, the crew gasped as a presence pushed into their minds, peeling away their defenses like fragile glass. Memories, fears, ambitions, it saw. Everything. Varric clutched his head. What are you?" The voice returned, but now it was inside each of them, speaking with 1,000 echoes. "You search for power. You do not understand." The warship's hold shifted, and for the first time Varric realized it wasn't built, it was grown, a living, thinking entity older than any empire, older than the stars themselves. Lura, his breath hitched. "It's not human, it's not alien, it's..." The warship spoke again. "You do not belong here." Then, without warning, the ship activated a wave of energy, ripped through space. Not an explosion, not an attack, a choice. The crew screamed. The judgment. Vic's vision blurred, his mind filled with images, entire civilizations rising and falling. Ancient wars fought in darkness, beings beyond flesh and metal. The warship was not a weapon, it was a warning, a remnant of something the universe had tried to forget, and now it had judged them. The cockpit's lights flickered back on, the engines hummed to life. Varric gasped for breath. His crew looked around, eyes wide with terror, but the warship was gone, as if it had never been there. Varric's hands trembled over the controls. He had spent his life chasing myths, searching for power. Now he had found something worse, something that had found him first, and he knew with absolute certainty it had let them live for now.